Hey. All right. Catching the Ride, chapters 18 to 20 today. So, Catching the Ride starts on page 72 in the PDF and page 135 in the book. Now, we get a couple of things here. As you can see on page 136 in the book and page 73 on the PDF, we see that Holden wants to talk to somebody again, and so if you're writing about importance of communication, this would be a good one. Anyway, I gave old Jane a buzz again, but the phone didn't answer, so I had to hang up. Then I looked through the address book to see who the hell might be available for the evening. Now, the person he ends up calling is Carl Luce, right? Now, Carl Luce is a student who is a couple years older than he was, and he does not like Carl Luce at all. He insults Carl Luce earlier in the text. But here, he calls him up because he desperately needs somebody to talk to. Then he calls up Carl Luce, and Luce agrees to meet with him. Sorry, I gotta plug in my computer. And going on, so then he goes to Radio City Music Hall, and he watched the Rockettes dance, and he doesn't like that, or says he doesn't like that because it's kind of a touristy thing to do. And then he talks about this movie, right? And it said, here we go. Talking about the kettle drum. On page 138 in the book and page 74 on the PDF, it said the thing he would have really probably liked is the guy who played the kettle drums in the orchestra. Now, with importance of communication and authenticity especially, this would be a good example of it, right? So there's many people in the book that Holden finds to be phony. Most people he does. But there's a handful of people throughout the book that he admires and thinks to be authentic, and this guy is one of those. The thing Jesus would have really liked is the guy that plays the kettle drums in the orchestra. I've watched that guy since I was about 8 years old. My brother Allie and I, if we were with our parents and all, we used to go to our seats and watch. It was way down so we could watch him. He's the best drummer I ever saw. He only gets a chance to bang the couple times during the whole piece, but he never looks bored when he's doing it. Then when he does bang them, he does it so nice and sweet and with this nervous expression on his face. Now, compared to other musicians like the piano player who are coming up here who does all the showing off, a percussionist such as this person might play only a couple of beats during the whole performance, right? The rest of the time they're counting and they're counting measures. Now, in terms of, the piano player does it and he does all the fancy show-off stuff and to get all the applause. But this guy, he's not necessarily doing it just for applause because the person who bangs the kettle drum a couple times through the whole performance is not exactly the star of the show, but he does it anyway because he likes doing it, right? He's not doing it for the applause like the other people. He's just doing it because he likes to do it. And then he goes and sees a movie, and near the end of it, which is on page 75 in the PDF and 139 in the text, this is why he dislikes movies so much, right? And so the end of this, everybody kind of ends up getting together. It said, "I'd tell you the rest of the story, but I might puke if I did. It isn't there anything that there's anything to spoil or anything. There isn't. Anyway, it ends up with Alec and the homie babe getting married, and then the brother that's a drunkard gets his nerves back and operates on Alec's mother so she can see again, and then the drunken brother and old Marcia go for each other, and it ends with everybody at this long table laughing their asses off. Well, the Great Dane comes in with a bunch of puppies. Everyone thought it was a male, I suppose, or something. All I can say is don't see it if you don't want to puke all over yourself." Now, the thing he doesn't like about movies is because they're fake, and they don't end the way life does, right? If his life had been more like a movie, Allie would probably still be alive. Right? But he's not. And rather than have this big kind of dramatic conclusion where everything's tied up, that's not the way life goes. And that's one of the things he dislikes about movies. At the end of the chapter, he brings up Great Gatsby. Just a quick reference, and this is on page 76 in the PDF. In page 141, it said, "I don't see how we could like that phony book like that one and still like the one by Ring Lardner. And the other one he's so crazy about, The Great Gatsby. DB got sore when I said that, but I was too young to appreciate it, but I don't think so. I told him I'd like to bring Lardner and Great Gatsby and all. I did, too. I was crazy about The Great Gatsby. Old Gatsby, old sport, that killed me." Now, he shouldn't like The Great Gatsby because, while it's a very well-written book, Gatsby is king of the phonies, right? Everything about him is phony and made up. So then he goes and he gets ready to meet, and he starts talking to Carl Luce, and he talks to Carl Luce about sex a lot because Carl Luce is older and had talked about sex a lot when they were in school, and he's trying to get some advice. Now, if you're writing about the importance of communication, Even though Luce is not a good person, he does give him some good advice and some good information that he that he would not have had ordinarily. So this is on the bottom of page 79 and in the PDF and page 148 in the text. And it said, naturally it does, and for God's sake, I told you the last time I saw you what you need. You mean go to a psychoanalyst and all? I said, that's what he told me how to do. His father was a psychoanalyst and all. It's up to you, for God's sake. It's none of my business what you do with your life. I didn't say anything for a while. I was thinking, supposing I went to your father and had him psychoanalyze me, what would he do to me? I mean, what would he do to me? He wouldn't do a thing to you. He'd simply talk to you, and you'd talk to him, for God's sakes. And for one thing, he'd help you recognize the patterns of your mind. By talking to someone, this is what he needs to do. And what a trained therapist does is they ask you questions, and then you talk about it, and then they kind of help you interpret your answers or try to look for things in your answers that you might not recognize and might not see that is there. Anyway, even though the conversation was generally a bad one, if you're writing about points of communication, this is one of the times he reaches out to talk to somebody and get some help from it, right? So this would be a good scene to put in. Now, he is very intoxicated at this point, and he leaves the bar and he calls up Sally, and Sally's very annoyed because he's wasted. And then he goes to Central Park, right? And just before that, he puts the red hunting hat on. So this is bottom of 80, or bottom of 80, top of 81. Finally, what I felt like giving old Jane a buzz and see if she was home yet. So I paid my check and all, and I left the bar and went to the telephones, where I kept my hand under my coat to blood from dripping. So he puts the hat on. I could hardly see straight. Anyway, so he talks to this lady, and hang on one sec. Here we go, on page 82, this is what I was looking for. As he's leaving the bar, he had just put his head in the sink because he tried to get sober, and I don't think that's an effective technique. Anyway, she said she was old enough to be my mother and all, and I showed her my gray hair and told her I was 42. I was only horsing around. Naturally, she was nice, though. I showed her my red hunting hat, and she liked it. She made me put it on before I went out because my hair was still pretty wet. She was all right. Now, he is drunk, right? But in terms of wearing the hat and demonstrating his maturity, he is wearing it for a more mature, logical reason, because his hair is wet and it's cold outside. So then he decides to go and check out the ducks. And if you're writing about the ducks, this is where the ducks come up the last time, right? So if you're writing about a symbol, it's important to make sure that you bring the first time it shows up, and then other times, and then the last time, because the last time is where the author kind of proves their point. Now, the ducks, as you remember, were a symbol that were connected to Holden and his fear of the future and what is happening, right? Ducks go through the natural change of winter. Most end up okay, right? They fly south. It's not easy, but most ducks end up okay. The natural change in the life of humans is growing up. And that's not easy either, but most people end up okay, right? And so the fact that he goes and investigates where the ducks are and does not find any there, which is on page 83, what I found, it was partly frozen and partly not frozen, but I didn't see any ducks around. I walked around the whole lake. I nearly fell in fact, but I didn't see a single duck. So I think from that we can assume that he learned that lesson, that the ducks are okay, right? He knows the birds fly south, as we saw in the museum, or as we will see in the museum, but I think we can draw the conclusion that he learns that the ducks are okay and that he will be okay too. Now, the thing, you don't need to bring up the pond here. Some people in their papers bring up the partly frozen, partly not frozen, as he's kind of communicating or kind of getting better. The focus is on the ducks, though, right? Because every other time that the ducks have come up, it's been the ducks specifically and not the pond. If it had been a focus on the pond, then that would be different, but bring the pond into the symbolic discussion is a little bit too much. And that's all I've got for today. So at this point, Holden breaks the Little Shirley Beans record and then goes home to talk to Phoebe. So thank you for your attention. I'll talk to you tomorrow.